What's up, everyone? My name is Royce Vanderbilt. I've always been that guy who's lived his life to the fullest and pushed any and all limits set upon me, especially when it involves motorsports, my body, even cage diving with great white sharks. I guess maybe you could call me an adrenaline junkie. I'm always up for a new story, a new memory, or better yet, a challenge. Last year, on one of the best days of my life, I married my best friend of 5 years. Not even a month later, I found myself laying in a hospital bed. My wife and I listened to doctors explain that I had not only dislocated my spine, but I had broken my neck, leaving me paralyzed from the neck down. Fast forward till now, 1 year later, I have defied every boundary and limitation that has been set in front of me. This is our story, my road to recovery. A backstory, I've always loved Jaws, hence the shirt that I'm wearing. It's been my favorite movie since I can remember realistically. I was obsessed with sharks like a lot of young people are. And I don't know why I saw that movie and always wanted to go cage diving. So I thought it would be like the coolest thing in the world to do. And
it was your 30th birthday.
Right. So Guadalupe Island, a lot of people think is like, when I explain Guadalupe.
Maybe I zoned out, but why? What's up with the island? Why'd you have to go to the island?
So because Guadalupe Island is the best place in the world to see great white sharks. It's beautiful. It's crazy. I mean, it legitimately feels like Jurassic Park. It's something like completely prehistoric. There are like these huge cliffs. It's all made from, I would say it looks like volcanic, like it's a volcanic island or something, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me. But I think the main aspect is, number one, the visibility, the water temperature, and then most importantly, the fact that that's where great white sharks go to migrate and to mate and stuff like that. So there is like a surplus of great white sharks in that area. So, when you're cage diving, I mean, I saw probably 30 different great white sharks every day.
How deep did you go?
You're on the surface of the water. So like
the top of
the cage sits on the surface of the water. It's like bolted to the back of the boat. And so you're just literally like, the cage is realistically, it's like 9 feet deep or something like that.
It doesn't move at all? Because I thought I've seen videos where like the cage is attached to a cable and
some cages, I think some
those are
setups,
ones that go really deep.
There's a submersible cage that actually drops down and you can go down all the way like to 30 feet or something like that, which I wanted nothing to do with. And then, because I was still very scared, like this was like something I really wanted to do, but I was fucking terrified at the same time because of like Jaws and shit like that. So I just thought it would be so cool to swim with like the water's greatest apex predator. I just thought it would be the coolest thing to see them in real life. But so basically, like, I think other cages sit on the surface of the water, but like they're just not, they like aren't attached to the boat. I've seen like a bunch of different setups and stuff. There's circular cages, there's square cages. My cage was like a rectangle, basically. It was probably 8 to 10 feet long and then 9 feet high. And then the cage had a depth from the back of the boat to the front of the cage of like, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet. I mean, they were pretty big. I mean, there was 3 of us at a time in each cage and you had plenty of room to move around, and like, it was big. You know what I mean? It wasn't small by any means. And that also goes into like, when you see the pictures of the shark in the cage, it gives you a relative size of how big it actually was. So you get down there and then you get down to like the bay that the boat is sitting in, and you get on the boat. The boat was awesome. I'll post some videos of the boat and stuff like that. But it's huge. I mean, it's an ex-Coast Guard boat. It reminds you of something that like you would see on National Geographic or something like that. Like, it's like laid out and super nice, but it's not like a yacht, but it's also not like a military boat either.
And like a mini ship.
Yeah, kind of like a little mini ship, and it's meant to like handle rough seas and stuff like that. And so I got on the boat, I do a tour of the boat. It's awesome. The whole time your drinks and your food are paid for. It's kind of like an all-inclusive, but like you're just on a boat and you're cage diving with great white sharks the entire time. So then it's a 5-day trip. You get down to the boat on the first day, and then it takes 24 hours to get from Mexico to Guadalupe Island, and you do it overnight. So like you basically go to bed and you wake up and you're at Guadalupe Island. I have some videos of that too that I'll be posting. And you know, I again super excited to be there, and like it's unlike anything I think you could ever experience. It's for sure worth it, like 1,000,000%. Which I'll get to. You can't actually cage dive at Guadalupe anymore, and I think that maybe my incident has something to do with it. So it's the first day there. You wake up, the cages drop in the water, and there's like a board on like the side of the back of the boat that like everybody writes their name of, like you get to basically go for 45-minute intervals each time. And I, put my name up there and basically patiently waited to go in the cage for the first time. So, I get in, I go in the cage the first time, and it is by far the most incredible thing I've ever done. I mean, it's almost like seeing an A-list celebrity like over and over and over again. It's like you can't quite articulate verbally like how cool it actually is, because it's not like going to the zoo. It's different than going to the zoo. It's different than like seeing animals in like, a cage or something like that. You're actually in the cage and you're seeing them completely in their own environment. And I remember the first thing that I thought was like, it is really surprising how they're just like fish. Like they're not as like creative. And I went into this being educated. I wasn't like stupid thinking, oh my God, they're like, they want to eat people. That's all they do. And whatever. Sharks are definitely not like that. But you could definitely see the different personalities in each shark and like how they behave differently, how some of them were kind of shy, how some of them were more aggressive. Basically they throw out like a big piece of tuna that's wrapped to a hemp rope and they draw it in close to the cage, and the sharks kind of follow it and go after it and whatever. But like even some of the sharks were like completely intimidated by the tuna. Like they were like, or most of the sharks too, like again, they have to pull the tuna in close to the cage. And a lot of times the sharks won't even come close to the cages. They're afraid to get close to the cages. And, so, first time in, it's amazing. It's everything that I thought it would be. I was completely addicted off the rip. Like it was like, this is the cool one of, if not the coolest. I've done some cool shit, and this was by far like one of the coolest things I'd ever done. And, got out of the cage. Again, this is the first day that I'm there. Get out of the cage. And then I waited for my extra turn, like to go in again. And, I didn't charge my GoPros like a fucking idiot. And got in the cage the second time with Ali and Krista. And this is where it's like weird. It's like bizarre shit to how this happened or whatever. But like I get in, we're in the cage for the second time. It's probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And there's these two male sharks that are like going back and forth of fighting over the bait. And at least from my observation, the males do not like the females. The females roll in and they're way bigger, way more aggressive, and the males like kind of hide from them and stuff like that.
The females are more aggressive?
Oh yeah. Oh. Way bigger and way more aggressive and way more dominant. So we're watching these two males go after this bait and stuff, and it's, real chill. There's not a lot going on. And this big female rolls in. She rolls in and they disappear. And then she disappears. And I have a video that I'll post right now of like, she goes after the bait. And I remember specifically thinking like, damn, that's a big shark. Like that one's gnarly, So my GoPro, like she goes away, two males come back, and my GoPro is like dying. And it's saying like 1 minute left. And I remember thinking specifically, I'll never forget this. I remember thinking, okay, when my GoPro dies, I'll get out, because I knew that I was getting close to the 45-minute window that I was going to have to get out anyways. So I was like, okay, I'm surprised nobody's like tugged on me yet. Maybe nobody wants to get in, like whatever, but I'll like not be a hog and I'll get out and whatever. So literally probably 30 seconds after I thought that, I'm looking out in front of us and there's the two males that are going after this bait. And all of a sudden Ollie's GoPro like goes right in my face, but pointing out to my left. Now, I was standing in the cage where I was like on the far left side of the cage. If you're looking off the back of the boat, our cage was the leftmost cage. So like my shoulder was to open ocean, and then Ollie was in the middle, and then Krista was next to him. And his GoPro went in front of my face like quickly, like instantaneously I knew something was like about to go down, but like, didn't know what was going to happen. And so his GoPro goes in front of my face, and I turn on my GoPro and just swing to the left in order to like just catch whatever his GoPro was about to catch. And literally it was like the cage got hit with a freight train. I mean, it was like the whole cage shook really hard, and it was like a really loud bang, huge like crumbling bang sound. And I looked over, and the female that I had just videotaped was like, her head was like halfway through the cage. Now, she hadn't broken the cage at that point, but her head was so far through that I remember distinctly being like, this video is going to be fucking awesome. Like, that was the first thing that I thought.
You have to explain that she was in like the camera hole.
Right. So like, the cage, the older cages, from what I understand, they don't make them like this anymore. But like my cage had like a 3-foot window that like went around the whole thing. So this, you could like hang way out of it.
Went around the whole thing.
The whole cage had like this window that went around the entirety of the cage. Oh. And I'll post a video of that right now, but like it was huge. You could, a fucking great white shark could fit like its head like halfway through it. That there's a video of a great white that goes into a shark cage that's extremely viral, that the shark comes out of the top. And that shark was an adolescent male that got into that cage. So it was able to fit its entire body through that window
without damaging the cage.
Without damaging the
through
cage.
The top windows too.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what happened in my case. The shark was so big that it broke the cage. So basically her head came through, and I remember being like, this video is going to be amazing. Because I remember seeing, obviously I Googled and YouTube some stuff that like, I saw some videos where like a shark's head kind of came through the cage, but it like kind of wiggled itself out, where I remember thinking like, God, I hope that happens. It would be so cool to be like that close to it. You know what I mean?
This guy.
And so her head comes through. So I didn't panic immediately. I was like, this is fucking awesome. And then she got her head through, and I kind of like kneeled down on the bottom of the cage to get like a better angle. And she started to do this like alligator roll shit, like where like her head was through, and then she started to like corkscrew like through the window. And she was so big that I remember thinking to like, these moments are like fucking programmed in my head forever. I remember thinking, that's going to for sure break. Like I could see like the momentum of her body coming through, and just like doing the physics in my head and being like, there's no way that's going to like, this is all bad. Like it was like computed that like, I remember thinking this is going to break. And then like within 3 microseconds, all the welds on the side of the cage popped, and you can hear them all start popping underwater. And then it was like, she just like tumbled in on top of us. Basically.
Yeah, and then what are you thinking?
Then I'm thinking at that point, I remember...
This probably feels all like slow-mo.
That's what I said.
Like it's
totally.
all
Time warp.
Quick, but like each moment is like a minute.
100%
Your
slow-mo.
brain like slowed.
My brain totally slowed down. And I remember it going through my head, this is actually happening, this is actually happening, this is actually happening. Like 3 times saying, like trying to get my brain. It was almost like I like blacked out for a second. Like it was like reboot, and like me coming to the realization of, holy shit, the shark's actually in the cage, and it's like on my lap. You know what I mean? Like it was like completely inside the cage with us. So at that point, I remember like really weirdly going like getting calm. Like I went into fight or flight, and I for sure went into fight, because I remember thinking, okay, like problem solve. How can I help her get out of the cage? Because I knew that it wasn't on purpose. What had happened was,
you knew like she wasn't trying to eat you.
Right. Like it wasn't like she was attacking us.
You can tell in the videos that she's just like panicked and like, what the fuck? Just trying to get out. Too.
Just understanding and watching them just for one time before, like it was very logical thought of like, this was unintentional. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I don't know if maybe in the like seconds that it happened, I saw that she had bait in her mouth too on top of it. So I had realized that the bait handler had pulled up like the bait to like alongside of the boat to like, as they sit at the edges of the boat and throw the bait off. So when they're dragging the bait up, it kind of goes on next to the cage next to me. So I think she saw it and just went after it like full steam. And I don't know if you've ever seen like a shark, when they are attacking something, they have this reflex that a film covers their eyelids to protect their eyes. Because, when you're eating a seal and shit, they're going to scratch at their eyes and stuff like that. So when their jaw opens and their teeth kind of come out and they're like, you see their gums kind of drop down in their eyelids, like they have like this thing that covers their eyelids. So basically, if you're thinking about it, when they commit, they commit. Like that's the other thing you notice is like when they decide that they're going to go after something, it's like sprinting with your eyes closed, basically. Jeez. So she went after this bait, not realizing that our cage was directly behind it. And basically took this bait, hit this bait as hard as she could, and went through the hole in the cage and then got stuck. And then panicked and just started thrashing around and corkscrewed her way through it and then fucking broke all the welds in the cage.
When she was in the cage.
And she was in the cage.
Are you attached to anything? Like, are you?
No.
You're free in the cage. So you could swim out of the cage. If it was open enough.
If it was open. But, dude, think about that.
But what about your...
It's shark infested, like, you see,
that's
like...
true, yeah.
So out of the cage is scarier in the cage. Yeah. You're free for all if you come out of the cage, yeah.
What about your air things? Was that...
Your regulator is attached to a hose that goes up to the top of the boat. So, like...
Oh, so you are attached.
Unlike scuba diving...
Like the only
you don't
thing
have a
really
tank on your back.
No, unlike scuba diving, which her and I have done... Scuba diving is different where you have the tank attached to you, where this just goes up onto the boat there's a bunch of tanks on the top of the boat and they just kind of switch them back and forth, I think.
Yeah, so even swimming out, you might lose your air.
It will. And so that's the only thing that kind of attaches you to the boat.
That's the biggest thing though.
Right. So like
in the cage.
You are attached.
So yeah. I'm in the cage. My brain is like, and I go into problem solving mode and I'm like, oh, I'll just help her get out. I'll just help her. I'll just kind of push her out. The whole side of the cage is open now. My left side of the cage, which was next to the cage, that whole part of the cube is now missing. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking, all right, I'll just help her out. You know what I mean? She's not going to eat me.
I'll show her the way.
I'll show her the way. So at this point, and I'm leaving out a very detailed point. So at this point, she had crossed over me, the part of the cage that she broke, landed on top of me, and I was holding on to it thinking like, like I'm saved. This piece of cage is on top of me, like sucks to suck. You know what I mean? Like whatever. And trying to problem solve because I have a cage already at this point. And I remember the shark hearing it hit the other side of the cage, and out of my peripheral vision, or like in the bubbles and all the short shit that's going on and the chaos that ensued after that moment, I could hear Krista screaming underwater, and all I could see was that like the shark's face was like in her lap, and there was blood coming out of where the shark was because when the shark kind of squeezed its way through, its gills are exposed. You know what I mean? So like, dude, you twist metal around in their gills and stuff. It's like exposed flesh, kind of. You know what I mean? So like very sensitive tissue. It's not like their skin. You know what I mean? And so it was bleeding from its gills or whatever, but I didn't know what it was bleeding from. And all I could hear was Krista screaming and underwater and stuff. And all of a sudden, I mean, it was like fractions of seconds. I could hear Krista screaming. I could see them. We were all kind of kicking and pushing and like whatever. And I remember thinking like, stay away from the white part because, their mouth is like white on their belly. Like everything's like white. And, so I remember trying to avoid like sticking my foot or arm like into its mouth unintentionally. But at this time, back to me thinking like problem solving, somehow the shark got twisted around where her face was kind of, I remember seeing this huge dark arrow like just pointing down at the bottom of the cage. And she kind of like her face came up to the point that I was like trying to push on her head. Like to like go this way, like here's how you get out. Not really realizing that her tail was sticking out of the top of the cage. They flipped the top of the cage open because that's the only way you can get out. So then her tail inadvertently kind of came out of the cage because she was so big. She couldn't fit inside the cage. And again, this is like a 9 foot by like 7 foot cage. So, I mean, she was, I think we kind of figured out that she was somewhere
her whole tail was out
13 to 14 feet and 3,500 pounds. I mean, like enormous great white shark.
3,500 pounds?
3,500 pounds. So it's like the size of like,
oh my Lord.
Dude, they're so big in person.
Huge.
They look like a small whale. You know what I mean? It's massive. You really don't realize how big they are until you see the entirety of them. Think about the majority of people that see them only see them at the surface of the water. So it's really hard to gauge how big they are. So when you're underwater and you see the entirety of the shark, they're fucking humongous. So, and I'm 6'1", 215 pounds. Like, if I like put my arms at my side, you could totally slide through its mouth for sure, 100%. So, I'm trying to like, I'm putting my hands on her head, and I remember being like, look, go out this way, like here, just swim out. And I was still in fight mode. Like I was like calm. I remember just being so calm and like time slowing down, everything kind of slowing down, and me like trying to help her. And as soon as I and you can see this in the video, which I'm going to post like clips of the video or like still shots of this video. We have the GoPro video. We have the video from the other cage, and we have pictures from my GoPro. And there's a video of it actually from outside of the cage too. We had it literally of every angle. So I'm pushing on her head, and she didn't like that very much. It pissed her off. Like I pushed on her head, and it was like she came alive. Like it was like a fucking bull in a china shop. Like it was like she just started thrashing her head back and forth. And the feeling of that power of like, it literally felt like there was a bull in the cage or like a horse or something. Like you could just feel the raw power. What?
I said it was a great white shark.
Right.
Dude.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So more than a bull.
You could literally just feel the raw power of her. And that immediately flipped me from fight to flight. I like, it was like immediately set panicking when I could realize that I have zero control over this situation. And if she fucking bites me, I'm probably going to die. Although it may be accidental, if it happens, I'm probably going to die out here.
Yeah, or if she slams you against the cage,
right?
Super
Something
hard.
Yeah, exactly. And so I panicked. And then at this moment, all of a sudden, I'm alone in the cage. I like look around and there's nobody else in the cage with me. Like it was like a split second. I'm like push on her. I freak out and I look around and it was like, I'm in the cage with this humongous great white shark by myself, completely trapped in this cage. So I kind of like, I shit myself. I literally like full out hyperventilating panic I backed myself up. She ended up kind of going into like one corner of the cage and I backed myself up into the other side of the cage. And I remember like hyperventilating and like, she kind of was bent to like looking away from me. And I remember like, okay, like you either got to get out or like, she's going to eventually find you here in this cage. Like you can't be stuck in here with her for like ever. You know what I mean? But like the fear of passing her, I knew like, okay, like I had that like where I couldn't move. I was so afraid I was like frozen. And I don't know why this happened or like what the fuck was running through my head. I fucking pulled my regulator out of my mouth. And I think I was just panicking, like just trying to like, you know, you have that feeling of like
on accident or on purpose.
I don't even know. All of a sudden, I remember having a regulator and then not having a regulator and like hyperventilating water, like pulling it out of my mouth. And almost, I thought actually when it first happened, I thought something caught on it, but watching the video over, I pull it out of my mouth. And like literally I was hyperventilating. So think about hyperventilating and being the most scared that you've ever been in your life and being underwater and then pulling the regulator out. You can't stop doing that. Like it's just a natural reaction. It's an autonomic nervous system response of hyperventilation. You know what I mean? So literally.
You stopped hyperventilating right when you pulled it out, yeah?
No, I kept hyperventilating.
So how did you not drown then?
That's exactly what happened. I literally started, I remember feeling water dumping into my lungs. Like it's the weirdest feeling ever. And my body immediately went into like abort, like surface, like gotta go up. Who cares? There's a shark there. You're going to drown. You know what I mean? So I literally rocketed out of the top of the cage. I like pushed off from the bottom of the cage, landed in between both cages off the back of the boat. So then I was in open water for a second, which was even scarier because I'm like literally floating there in between two cages in like with a bunch of great white sharks swimming around. Granted, that was for like maybe 2 seconds because all of the people, all of like the crew pulled me out of the water onto the back of the boat.
Everybody is watching
me. They thought I died. They thought like everybody was like, dude, I don't mean to be morbid, but I for sure 100% thought you were dead. Like there was blood in the water. You weren't coming up. Everybody else came out and it was just like thrashing around down there and like nothing was happening. So I was down there for like a minute by myself.
Jeez, dude.
So I'll never forget this. I like love this part. I distinctively, like it was yesterday, I remember being pulled onto the back of the boat, having my eyes closed, and it's ironic now that I'm paralyzed. But I was like laying there and I moved my feet and I moved my hands. And I remember being like, I'm good. Like, I just fucking survived that. Holy shit. Like that is the craziest thing ever. And they lifted me up and they were like, the main guy that like runs the whole thing, who's a great guy. Love that. I still follow that guy. He's a fucking awesome guy. His name is escaping me at the moment, but like, he was like, everybody was on the back of the boat, all the crew, all the guests, everybody's like looking right at me. We're on the edge of the back of the boat and he grabs me by the shoulders and he's like, are you okay? Like, Royce, are you okay? And I looked at him, kind of blinked a couple times and was like, that was fucking awesome. And he had this like, you could kind of see this like just relief kind of hit him. And he was like, and then everybody kind of had this like nervous laugh of like, dude, this dude's fucking got to screw loose.
Literally best case scenario of a person for that to happen to.
Dude,
I also would have been pumped. A lawsuit.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I was so pumped. And because, you know, it's like, how often can you say that you survived something like that? And I knew it had maybe happened like one other time, but like, for as far as I know, there's at least no other situation that I know of that something like that has happened. It wouldn't surprise me that it'd be hush hush, but like, not that I'm aware of. And everybody's on the back of the boat. They round up everybody.
You literally got what you wished for.
What? I know. I was like, how could this be any better?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, her cousin Jeffy, who was going to go with me, was like, you motherfucker. He's like, like you got the golden ticket. Like, that's how can you beat that? That's like the best experience you could possibly have. Unscathed. You know what I mean? So this is a testament to how crazy I guess I am. But so they round up everybody on the back of the boat, like in the kind of like living quarters or whatever. And they're like, okay, so, like, that's not supposed to happen. You know, like, what do you guys want to do? This is where you come into play. So I get off the boat and immediately text her. And I'm like, what did I don't even remember what I texted you.
It was only two went through. And I feel like the first one was, oh my God, a shark just broke into my cage. You either, right. I don't know, you either said that's either all you said.
Yeah. I mean, I said something like, you're never going to believe what happened. A shark broke into my cage.
Yeah. And then I replied back, like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Because remember, she knew I was on this trip. When when you go to Guadalupe Island, you don't swim with other sharks. It's just great white sharks. You know what I mean? It's the best of the best. It's like front row seats. You know
wonder if I ever screenshotted.
I'm sure you have them. So then.
So then when I responded, it went green. Like my bubble went green. And it didn't go through, and then I'd never heard from him for like 6 hours.
Yeah. So
you weren't on the boat anymore, right?
No, I was on the boat. You can't.
Okay, you just said when you got off the boat.
Huh?
Your original statement was when I got off the boat, I texted her.
No, sorry. When I got like on the boat out of the water.
Okay.
It was the first thing I did was, you're never gonna believe what happened. A great white shark broke into my cage, and they turned off the Wi-Fi. Oh. So they turned off the Wi-Fi. Because they didn't want people to start shooting out. So they knew there were videos of it, and they just like wanted to like get everybody on the same page. So they turned off the Wi-Fi, which I was like, what the fuck? It's the only way I can talk to anybody. So the Wi-Fi turns off. The Wi-Fi turns off, and then like I can't talk to her at all. And they didn't turn it on for like another 6 hours. So all she knows is that a shark broke into my cage. You're never going to know what happened. A shark broke in my cage.
So like, obviously I knew he was fine because he text messaged me that. But at the same time, it was like, what the fuck is going on?
Right. So
that had to be horrifying.
They turn off all the Wi-Fi, And they're like, they have a big discussion with us, like, it's not supposed to happen, yada yada. Like, whatever. What do you guys want to do? And I was like, I want to stay. I want to stay. I want to keep going. Like, it's day 1.
You said you wanted to stay?
Fuck yeah. I was like, I want to stay.
That's
what I thought. I said to everybody, I go, listen, the chances of that happening again is like lightning striking you twice. It's possible. It's possible. But like, this is way too cool to just quit and be done with it. Like, whatever. Like, I'm willing to take the chances. You know, like, now granted, I'm the nut job that was like, that was fucking awesome. You know, but still. And then everybody was like, I mean, if he wants to do it again and stay in, like, yeah, let's stay. Like, it's worth it. It's not going to happen again. You know, like, whatever. So next day we'd stopped for the day. So now they're down a cage. So then we only have 1 cage in the submersible, and you have to be certified. You have to be scuba certified to go in the submersible. So I'm not certified. I've gone scuba diving a bunch of times, but I've never gotten certified. And even if I did, I wouldn't go in the submersible. It would freak me out too much. So literally the guy with a Jaws tattoo has exactly what happens in Jaws happen, which is fucking nuts.
To him?
To me.
Oh.
So I'm talking kind of in third person.
Well, doesn't watch movies. Remember, he doesn't know anything.
Here's the way you're saying it. I know what happens in Jaws.
Well, remember, Jaws breaks into the cage. And the cage, and like from then being little, I wanted a cage dive. He's so full of shit.
No, I know. There's a great
Will,
white
for the
shark.
record, Will has seen no movies.
No, the great white shark breaks into a cage, and basically it's the same story that happened to you.
I mean, other than the shark wasn't trying to eat me and shit like that. It wasn't like some evil.
That's true.
Demonic,
I remember that part.
Shit. But so I'm like, let's stay, let's keep going. We got 2 more days of this. This is not going to happen again. They let the 3 of us go back in the cage the first time because I was like, we got to go right back in. Knowing from like dirt bikes, motocross, BMX, all that stuff, you crash, you got to go do it again, because if you don't, you're going to be too afraid to do it again. You're going to give yourself like time to think about it and whatever. Like, give me that look. Just coming from the guy in a wheelchair that's paralyzed from motocross. God, do it again. This was not because of me necessarily. So just for the record. So I'm like, we got to get in immediately because otherwise we're going to be too freaked out and we won't do it. And I do remember, like, I had to take a Xanax and I got in and I like missed a step getting into the cage, like again for the first time. And it kind of gave me this sense of falling feeling. And like, I remember like having to like do breathing exercises under the water and being like, you're fine, it's okay, like calm the fuck down.
All the oxygen.
Yeah, sucking all the oxygen out of the tanks. So, and then like it was fine. We were back in, and it was weird because that next day it had like kind of had overcast and it was like dark. So the water was darker and so it was like creepier. And Krista got in and she was in, and I hope I don't mess this up, but she got in and I feel like she was in for like 5 minutes and was like, I'm done for the trip. I'm not doing it again. Like, it's just she did it. Total credit to Krista. She got back in. But then if I recall correctly, she got back out and never got back in after that. Ollie stayed in with me and we stayed there. I've got some videos of that I'll post of like right after the accident, that we were in there. But, so then honestly, the rest of the trip was pretty smooth sailing. I mean, like I got in as much as I possibly could. It was awesome. I mean, I had so much time in the cages and got so much great footage. And I was actually the last person on the last day to get out. I was in the cage by myself, sitting Indian style in the corner of the cage, just watching them go by. And I remember specifically being like, soak this in as much as you can because you may never be able to do this again. And like just really trying to appreciate the experience and how fucking awesome it was. And I'll never forget that part too. Just being like, all right. And they tugged me and they pulled the cages out and we left. So, I mean, it was a phenomenal trip. I'm a shark advocate. I think sharks shouldn't be killed as much as they do. And I don't think that they're evil creatures. I definitely want to like put out that message that like, this was a complete accident and like, it wasn't trying to eat me. If anything, I feel bad for the shark. The shark did survive. So I know this for a fact because, obviously some of the people in that inner circle, like that story got out that had happened. And, one of the ladies that is a part of that group, she sent me pictures of it later because it had a bunch of like green stripes on it from the paint coming off from the cage, and the cage was green. So like they knew that was the one that got in or whatever. And it was a big female. I mean, they're kind of hard to mistake. So she sent me pictures of it and she's like, she's all right. She's doing good. And I was like, fuck yes.